Coming up next on the Wet Fly Swing podcast.
Anyways, it's quite a fascinating history. Now that trench or that canal that they built, obviously, I think they said they only kind of ran a few steam paddlers through it, and then they never used it after like a few months or something like that. Anyways, so the Columbia system, like where I grew up, it's headwaters, right? And where you are, it's like that's the terminal point, right? That's where it meets the ocean. So it is such a massive drainage. Like, oh man, it is such a massive drainage. It's so cool.
That was Derek Bird taking us into the headwaters of one of the great Western rivers. Coastal cutthroat, bull trout, and a journey around the great BC fishing destinations today on The Swing.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Want to give a reminder, we have a great new position with this podcast. We're looking for an account manager who loves events, traveling, and engaging with the community. You can go to wetflyswing.com/manager right now to find out how to join the team. You can check out that page and actually enter and fill out your information right there. Today's episode is sponsored by Drifthook, who has pre-packed fly assortments for every stage of your fly fishing journey. Each kit is organized by species and includes instructional videos, easy-to-follow guides. Their fly shop quality flies are hand-tied and inspected before being packed in these careful, durable packs. And I can tell you, these are sweet little fly boxes. Check them out right now. Drifthook, wetflyswing.com/DRIFTHOOK. Drifthook. Today's episode is sponsored by Zag.Fish, who creates ethically sourced premium fly tying materials with their 5D brushes. These are the Fairflies brushes that we've talked about before. Zag.Fish is the place you can go to pick up Fairflies products and the other stuff they have going on in the fly tying niche. 5D brushes contain the perfect proportions to tie great streamer, bass flies, saltwater flies, and we're going to be using some of these flies even more as we do some of these saltwater trips. You can check out Zag.Fish right now by heading over to wetflyswing.com/Zag. That's ZAG. Derek Bird, founder of Fly Fusion Magazine, takes us all around BC today as we focus on the best places if you're planning a trip out to British Columbia. We get the insight also into his new book and find out where he is taking Fly Fusion Magazine next. We get the whole rundown on the history and his connection, his brother and him, how they've put together this great magazine and program. And we also find out who Skeed Brokowski is. You need to know Skeed. We actually have this guy coming on the podcast here early next year. So we talk about Skeed Brokowski in this unnamed area, unnamed rivers of BC. So we talk about that. But okay, let's get into this one. So without further ado, here we go. Derek Bird from Fly Fusion Magazine. How you doing, Derek?
I'm doing really well, Dave. Yeah, I've been excited to come on your podcast and chat with you. So
nice. Yeah, this is going to be fun. BC is one of my, it's the places I always, I kind of love. I've been up there for Skeena, Steelhead. I've done some stuff with Phil Roy, and I hope to get up there more. I know we've done some episodes. It seems like whenever we do episodes in BC, they're always big ones. I think Brian Niska was the last one we did, and he really dug into just steelhead. Like, just it was a good episode and very popular. So I'm sure this one will be a good one as well, because you're the Fly Fusion Magazine is one of the biggest magazines, obviously in North America, but maybe in the world. I don't know. It seems like it's out there everywhere. And then you got a bunch of other things going on. We're going to talk maybe some bull trout today, maybe some top places to head to if you're heading to BC. But before we get into Fly Fusion, everything, bring us back to how you first got into fly fishing.
Oh man, yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I was like, I was like a super young kid, right? Like my family, I was kind of born into it. Really, like my dad, he fly fished, and my grandfather, he fly fished, and so it was kind of like a passing of the torch in a way, where it just became like, hey, I mean, you fish. And my dad he was pretty smart though, right? Like he didn't start me out as a fly angler. And I think that's like really important, just because like as a kid, you just want to catch fish, right? You don't care how you do it. You just kind of want to catch fish. And then at about 9 years old, I saw that my dad did it like that he did it differently. And I'm like, oh man, I want to fish like that. And so at about 9 years old, we just, I think I took his gear a lot of times, right? He'd be at work and I'd kind of go and rummage through his stuff. And so a lot of it was kind of like self-learning, right? Like, oh, this is how dad does it. So, and this is what he does it with. And there was this cool little lake. It was about 4 or 5 kilometers from our house. And my brother and I, we used to strap our rods onto our bikes with binder twine, and we used to ride to the lake and just kind of learn the ropes from there, right? And it was such a cool way to grow up. And then as I got older, like you said, I'm a BC boy, right? So I grew up in British Columbia, and the older we'd get, like say at 14, 15, you're like the kind of geography, it kind of expands, or you kind of look at things a little bit different. You're like, you know what, that lake maybe is not enough anymore. So let's ride our bikes out to this little stream or that little stream. And then we'd go out and we'd, fish for the day, and we'd learn what boundaries we could push. And, a lot of it was kind of self-taught. Like back then, like, growing up in the 80s, it was like, there wasn't kind of that flood of information that we have today, right? Where it's like so accessible. You really had to go out and search for information in order to get it. And so a lot of the stuff that we learned, you'd pick up on stream, like you'd run into like maybe a guide or like an old timer, right? That had been out there, and he might toss you a tip or two, and you'd kind of go with that, and you'd feel like you're on top of the world because, you got this new tip or something. And so that was kind of it, right? Like, the place that I grew up was, today it's become such a destination, right? Like I grew up in the Kootenays, and
oh yeah.
And I, just what a place to grow up, kind of in the, like, geography wise, it's called the Rocky Mountain Trench, and which spans, like, it basically spans for, I would say, 90% of British Columbia. It heads like kind of right from way up near like northern BC up in the Prince George area, all the way down to, basically Montana. And it's just this large trench, and there's just rivers everywhere, right? And just like, and famous rivers too, man. Like it's, so I was very, very, very fortunate to grow up in that area, and just kind of, it was all about West Slope Cutthroat when I was younger. And then as I got older, I started to learn that there were bigger types of fish there too. And, and those are the bull trout. So, so that was kind of my journey, is, very much kind of like where I grew up and the family I grew up in. It was very much like, if you didn't fly fish, man, it was, you were kind of missing out, right? Because it's like, it would be like, I don't know, it'd be like living in Hollywood and not watching movies. So
yeah, that's right. And then bull trout is one of those species that you don't hear about a lot. I mean, their distribution, it was probably a lot wider, obviously, back in the day, but now, I mean, you guys still, is bull trout still a pretty popular fish that people are chasing up there?
Oh yeah, very much so. What's funny is that, like, at kind of like, early on in my kind of fishing career, I guess you could say, it was all West Slope Cutthroat, because I didn't even know that there were bull trout in the rivers, right? Because like I said, it wasn't, where, like, at that time, the Kootenays, it wasn't popular to fish. And so there wasn't a lot of information in an era where there wasn't a lot of information. And so, so we didn't really know that there were like these massive, bull trout. They're not actually trout, they're a char, but we didn't even know that there was these massive fish. And like, because they're, they're very, they're nomadic in a way, right? Like, so they don't just kind of sit in one place. A lot of times they kind of move around, and at different times of the year, they're in different places. And so, every once in a while, I think that maybe the very first time that I kind of got a sniff of it is like, I was dry fly fishing in this one little stream, and this it was about an 8-inch West Slope came up and hit my fly, and I was bringing it in. Then all of a sudden there was like this massive, it was probably, I don't know, maybe like a 10 or 12 pound fish.
Oh, wow.
That was chasing after this little cutthroat. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that there were fish that big, right? And then, and so I was kind of baffled by that. I didn't land it. I remember not landing that fish, but I can remember seeing it.
So the trout ate your fly and it ate the trout.
That's right. Yeah. And so, like, I can remember seeing this massive fish latched on, and then kind of like wondering what was going on, and then realizing that I had actually no clue what was actually happening kind of right under my nose, right? And then there was there was an old timer that was my dad's friend, and he was talking. He knew that I fly fished. He was talking one day about about how there's these massive fish in the rivers that we fish and nobody knows about them. And I was so fascinated by what he was talking about. And then he was he's talking like sizes. Oh yeah, like up to up to like 15 pounds. And I'm like, no way. I said, no way. That's not, no way. And he's like, yeah, no, he's all draw you a map on where to go, right? Like right now, this is where you're going to go. So he drew us this map and to this like canyon that I'd never been to before, on this river that I'd never been to before. And it was kind of like, as a kid, it was like, and when I'm saying a kid, I'm saying like, 15, 16, 17, right? It was like
you're driving there now.
Well, exactly. And you couldn't have like kind of X marked the spot better for me, right? Like I wouldn't have cared if it was like, I wouldn't have been happier if it was a treasure chest. You know what I mean? Like, like the thought of like him drawing a map for me and my buddies and kind of like saying, this is where you're going to go and this is how you're going to fish for them. And yeah, and by the way, you can fly fish for them. And man, it was like this whole new world opened up for us. Right. And so it was very much, and we did. So we went to where he was talking about, and sure enough, we started to hook into these fish. And from then on, it was kind of a, okay, now we gotta, these fish are in here. So now we gotta, figure out kind of how to catch them. And because they're migratory, right? And so they're here, they're in certain places sometimes, and they're kind of in different places at different times. And so it's very much kind of a finding game, as opposed to like, I think once you found them, they're very much a meat eater, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're so it's not, I wouldn't say it's difficult to catch them once you've found where they're at, because you figure out kind of what type of meat is smaller than them in the streams, right? And it's like, it's cutthroat and it's whitefish and sculpin, and so that's the meat that's smaller than them, and that's what they'll mow on. And so so you start to throw these big streamers, and we started to fish 8-weight rods, and big streamers with sink tips, and then you figure out kind of at different times of year what they're into, and every once in a while you can nymph for them and find some fish that way too, right? And so there's different ways to get them. But
I love the map. Is so cool. We actually had a cool story. One of our trips up to the Skeena, some guy up in, I can't remember if it was Terrace, somewhere up there, he basically drew us this map of like, because we went into the Skeena, like put rafts in and floated down through the canyon, not knowing, never being in it. And he drew us this map. It was like, okay, here's where you got to like stay ride or die in this rapid. He had all these little, and it was this crazy thing where, it was like literally a napkin, a napkin map, or whatever. And it worked though. Yeah. I mean, it worked good enough to keep us, alive. But I love the maps because, you talk to somebody who knows it, they draw you a little map, and now you get in there. And that's kind of what I want to do today, really, is kind of have a map, a digital map today of like where people could go if they're heading up there. I do also want to highlight Brian Chan, episode 243. We had Brian on, and he broke down. Gem. Yeah, totally. Yeah. He broke down like BC Stillwater, like fishing and kind of that stuff. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. But yeah, no, this is good. I mean, I think there's a lot of way. Bull trout, I definitely want to dig in today, and also some other places to fish. But let's go back to the Fly Fusion magazine, because this is kind of a major thing here. Talk about how you go from the 17-year-old fishing for chasing bull trout to a magazine.
Yeah, what a great question. I think it was so. It's a bit of a long story. I won't go too much into it, but it is a bit of a long story. It's I think that it probably started, or the kernel of the idea probably started with my dad and my brother, actually. And there was there was some talk about the fact that there was no big trade show up in Canada, like in Western Canada at the time. And my dad, he was kind of recently retired, and my brother my brother is very much like I would say he's kind of a marketing genius. And so they kind of got together with kind of a few people that had approached them, who had said, yeah, there's no kind of big, fly fishing trade show in Western Canada. So what do you guys want to do about that type thing? And they're like, oh yeah, well, we can figure something out. And so they very much did. And so it kind of started out, the magazine kind of started out as like, yeah, if we're going to start this, Western Canadian fly fishing exposition, then we better have like a trade magazine to go along with it. And so the idea started out there, but then it was like, hey, wait a second, there's not really kind of a magazine for, Western Canada, a fly fishing magazine. So why don't we like start to market that? And so all of a sudden the idea went there, and then it kind of like was like, hey, wait a second, like there's a lot of people that kind of look at Canada as a destination and that would probably be interested in, in a magazine that featured, Canadian writers and that type of thing. And so it became that, and then it became kind of like very much international. And so it just kind of, and I, I explained that in like, whatever it was, a minute and a half or 2 minutes, but that was kind of like, essentially 10 years worth of work, right?
That's awesome. What is the, what is the Eastern Canada magazine of the comparable? Is there one out there?
No, not anymore. No. There used to be one, but, and I can't remember what it was called, but there was one when we first started.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think it was called maybe the Canadian Fly Fisher or something like that.
Gotcha.
But it was very much, it was very much Eastern, Eastern based. And yeah, so yeah, anyways, and my brother, so my brother called me up one day and said, I got this idea for this magazine. And so we kind of threw around some ideas, and I said to him, I'm kind of a conundrum. I don't know if a conundrum is right, or maybe hypocritical, or I don't know, call it what you want to call it. But like, I'm kind of just like the next fly angler, right? Where it's like, yeah, you got secrets, and you don't want to share all your secrets, but
right.
But then, I'm part of a magazine that's what we're about, right? We're kind of about like, sharing the best tips and tricks. But then there's a few that I really keep kind of close to home. Some of my secrets I kind of keep close to home. But anyways, my brother, he said, we've got this idea for this magazine. Do you want to be involved? Because he knew my passion for fly fishing. Then he also knew my education background, which I have I have a degree in communications and English literature. And so he knew that I knew how to kind of dot I's and cross T's and such. So he's like, how'd you like to, kind of cross passion with kind of some of your, your knowledge base? And I said, yeah, that would be really cool. And so then we kind of set out to figure out a name for it. And that's always cool, right? That creative process is.
Well, and your brother, I want to dig more into that because this is interesting with your brother. But so how did the Fly Fusion, how did that come?
Yeah. And that's like, I love that creative process, right? Like and it was kind of like, we had some partners at the time that were like, they had like a fly fishing TV show. And so they kind of partnered with us. And so it was kind of, there was about 4 or 5 of us that were throwing around names. And it was interesting because back then it was basically just email, right? So you'd email out a name. You'd be like, how about like, you'd email out like Casting Creole or something like that. And then like, it would take like 5 days for people to get back to you because it was such an awful name. Right. And then you'd kind of throw out other names, and, you knew it was a half decent name if somebody got back to you in like a day. But it was interesting one night, and this was after kind of about 2 weeks of brainstorming for the name. One night I was just, kind of head on the pillow, and I think that's kind of when some of the best creative ideas come, right? Your head's on the pillow and you're kind of half asleep. And I was kind of bouncing around like word plays, and that's what I was doing. And then I was like, fly fusion, fly. And so I kind of threw around this fly fusion, and I was like, oh, that's like a great idea. I was thinking like in my mind, I thought, oh, that sounds good, or it could work. Right.
Yeah.
And so I emailed that the next morning. I kind of got up and emailed that. And that was kind of that was a 10-minute response one, where it was like kind of within 10 minutes, everybody had emailed back and said, that's it. That's the one. And you're just like, you feel like you're on top of the world, right? Because one of your creative ideas, like you're probably somebody that's very creative too, just in the type of work that you do, right? Yeah. And so that there's like, that as a creative person, that there's a lot of creativity that falls flat, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But then, and then there's even some, that's exactly it. And then there's even some that's like, that's good, but it's not quite maybe top shelf or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of learn after a while that, that even a good creative idea, if it's not accepted, that's just the way it is, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, and so there's no kind of kind of hurt. But I think as kids, or when we're young, we think kind of all of our ideas are the best ideas in the world, right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, and that's a good tip for people that are getting into it or want, is that, most of it's not going to, 80% of it is going to fail. So you got to be good with that. But,
Yeah.
But it's like, the other thing is you could try something, even the name, you could even try a name for something, and it's not, it's not the end of the world if you have to change that, right? Even a website.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you could have changed, and even now, rebranding, right? We're in the process of thinking about doing a little bit of a rebrand next year.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, well, gosh, what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is, maybe people don't love it, and and then we could always go back. It's not like the end of the world. I think the worst thing would be if you're not testing things, because if you're not testing, then you're staying stagnant, right?
Yes, that's very true. Yes. Yeah. We went through a bit of a rebrand just kind of 2 years ago, where we kind of redesigned the cover format and all that. And same thing, right? It's like, we got some really, really positive feedback on it. And yeah. So that was, it was really good. But that's cool that you guys are kind of thinking in that direction too. And kind of,
well, we're always thinking, and I think everybody should, if you have a business, is like, okay, how are we growing? How are we doing? How are we serving our people? And like, again, I think that if you're trying new things, so we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think our idea is that we're going to be just expand out a little more. I guess that's always the thing. Like, can you grow in expanding to new markets?
Well, and I think that's kind of what the magazine did too, right? And like I said, my brother, he's a marketing genius, and it was we were just print at first, like very much just print, and then he was like, well, you know what, we could have a TV show, and so we kind of looked into that space, and sure enough, like there was room for us in that space too. And then we are kind of like, some of the brains behind Fly Fusion magazine are also, some of the brains behind like the International Fly Fishing Film Festival. And so we're kind of like, oh, we could do like IF4, right? We could, we could have our own film festival as well. And so it became very much kind of a, this trifecta of like, kind of each brand kind of works with the other brand, and
exactly.
And it very much becomes that, so then it becomes very recognizable, right? Like where you where we've got a lot of people that are super invested in our print, and love the fact that it's very educational, and that they can still kind of have what's the word for it? Maybe like tactile information in front of them, right? Where they're actually like touching it, where so much of so much of the information that we have right now is, I don't know if the word ephemeral is the correct word, but it's kind of like it's out there, and because there's so much of it, what's here today is gone tomorrow, right?
Totally. And not in depth. That's the other thing. That's what's cool about the podcasting space, like this interview right now we're doing, is that it's hard to find an interview out there. I know you've done some podcasts, which is amazing, but finding that long form, interview content, like you can't do, there's nowhere else you're going to find you being, and it's cool because if you could write a blog post or you can do something online, but it's usually, it's short and people aren't going to read the whole thing, or that's going to be quick, right? So that's the power of that. And the print. So you guys, it sounds like you're not going away from print, because you do see magazines like Field and Stream, big magazines that have gone totally away from print, but it sounds like you guys are sticking with it.
Well, you know what? Yeah. What's really cool is that like we kind of saw the space change, right? Like, everybody did, right? You look around with social media, and like you saw the space change. But what was really cool, and what we found was that people, they wanted, they wanted tactile information, meaning like they still wanted something they could hold that had kind of a beginning and an end to it, right? Where they could open up and kind of still feel like they were in control of that. And what was really, really amazing is that we found that that people, that like magazines that are like niche industry magazines, which I would still consider, even though fly fishing has like massively exploded in the last number of years, I still consider it like a niche kind of pastime, right? And we have found that people that are invested in niche pastimes still want print, and they still devour it. And so we're very like, I don't know, blessed or fortunate or whatever word you want to use. We feel very like, whatever that word is, because people still want it, right? And we're, we've got film and we've got all of that too. But yeah, to be able to have, to be able to have something that people still want to hold and kind of go through. And I think that, and you'll attest to this, but, as fly anglers, it's like, man, fly anglers can't get enough information.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that's our addiction, right?
It
like
is.
We're so addicted to, to getting as much information as we can.
Yeah.
And our, our magazine, it's very like, we kind of, that's the major driving force, right? We wanted something that was very instructional, and we wanted to like find kind of the best of the best as far as people that were, that could offer instruction. We wanted to pair that with, with the best of the best photographers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we've done. And that formula, it worked really well. Right. And then even with like our cover shots and stuff like that, like when we came onto the scene, it was just kind of all fin and grin, right, on covers. And we came in and kind of in the early 2000s, and we're like, hey, like there's other parts of the sport that people are, super fascinated with and will be super attracted to, not just the fin and grin. And so we really, experimented with covers, and people really kind of responded to that too, and kind of the creativity of that.
Right.
And so that was very cool to see. But but anyways, it's, it is. It's very much like even something like podcasting, Dave, right? Where, I can't tell how old you are, but
well, we're in the same. I think when you said 80s, I mean, I'm coming up on 50, right? So
nice. Okay, yeah. And that's me. So
we're in the same. Yeah, no, the 80s.
We're kind of in the same ballpark, right? But I can remember, driving places, and when you were driving, you could listen to your cassette tape or whatever, but you could, you're always listening to the radio too, right?
Yeah.
And kind of podcasting has come back and filled that, like it's filled that space and like in spades, right? Like, and so that's pretty cool to see too, just how our, communication forms, how they shift and kind of evolve and kind of rebrand and yada, yada, yada. And it keeps going.
And the change we've seen, it's been cool to be part of it because, whatever you want to call it, the digital revolution. But I mean, what we've seen the last 10 years or whatever it's been, it's pretty amazing to watch the changes. And the cool thing, I think, is that part of the cool is there's some bad, obviously there's bad that go along with it, but everybody in the world has a chance to do something, right? I mean, literally anybody can come out and create their own thing, for better or worse. But I think I always look positively about it because I'm like, you know what? You guys, we trust you, right? We trust you because you have, and people will trust me because I bring on the great guests, right? But you might have somebody out there that just creates their own brand and gets a bazillion follows, and all of a sudden now they're a superstar, right? What's your take on that? When you look out, when you see as a print, what's your take there?
Yeah. And that's such a fabulous question, because it's like, because you want to talk about like different eras. So in our era back in the 80s, it was like information was held by a gatekeeper. Like that's what we called it, right? Was the gatekeeper. So it was only kind of like
Field and Stream or like whoever.
That's exactly it, right? So kind of only the, the best of the best, and or there was that facade anyways, right? That it was only the best of the best that could kind of like, teach or write or, whatever it was. But now with kind of the, with the evolution of like, say, social media and stuff, like you said, it's like, kind of everybody can have a, a computer and a mic and, and kind of their own device as far as filming. And so what we see is, we see kind of this flood of information, but we've seen kind of the gatekeeper become the common person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, well, if you strike a chord with somebody in some way, whether it's good quality or not, right?
Yeah.
It can be absolute trash,
right?
But somebody might like come along and go, well, yeah, but in kind of that minute and a half, there was like this
gold
kind of like 2 seconds of gold, right? And so it's like, people, we've just become our own gatekeepers essentially. Like the keys have been handed over, and we become our own gatekeepers and people. And so it's like this absolutely fascinating shift to see that. And, with that, you see kind of like, you kind of see maybe people that have risen to fame. And I'm not just talking like kind of like outdoor industry, but but like say like a, like a Jake Paul or a Logan Paul or something like that, right? Where they've just massively risen to fame, and you kind of like my kids, my kids who are now in university.
Oh yeah.
They they'll show me like some of the people that they follow, and I'm looking at it and I'm going like, really?
Like who would be somebody they follow?
Well, a lot of them, like they'll follow like these kind of, these gamers and stuff like
gamers,
that, right?
Yeah,
like,
right. Just some kids out there.
Yeah. So they're kind of following like stuff like that, and you
Yeah.
kind of like, but what I see that, what they end up following. So I'm not talking about like say a Jake Paul right now, where it was kind of like, I still don't get why people followed him. Like I don't. Maybe
I'll have to look that up. I'm not even familiar with Jake Paul. What's his specialty?
Well, he was kind of like, I think he was early to like the YouTube thing. I believe that was kind of it. And so he became like this kind of like mass sensation. So kind of all the kids like know kind of who he is. And then he started fighting then he started fighting everybody just in the last kind of few years.
He's the fight. Right? Yeah, I know. I heard about it. Yeah, he's kicking butt, right? I heard he's like actually doing well or some weird thing, right?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Right. Okay.
So it becomes kind of like this. Well, can you brand yourself really well, right?
Yeah.
And if you can brand yourself really well, then maybe it doesn't matter so much like what you're sending out there. Like people will obviously start following. Now I say that, but then I also say that, that people who are good at what they do, they gain a following too, right?
Yeah.
So
right. No, it's a good take. It is. I mean, and Jake Paul, I'm glad you threw that one out there because that's such a good. I don't even know. I've never even watched any of his stuff. Well, maybe I watched one thing, but you hear about him, right? And it's like, okay, this guy, I have no idea, but yeah, now he's like a fighter, and it's an interesting, if nothing else, right? I mean, that's an interesting story. A guy that's actually out there like legit fighting. I have no idea. But so anyways, I don't know. Again, I always stay positive on it because I always say there's always going to be the negative stuff that's going on out there too with all the politics and stuff. But I think giving people an opportunity to get out there and give the common person a chance just to have fun and express, and then grow a following and maybe make a business around it. I think that's a pretty amazing thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and then like you said too, on the kind of the flip side of it, like a lot of Fly Fusion stuff, we still have, essentially we still have kind of the gatekeeper, right? And we still see that people want that too. Say with like our film festival or something, right? Like with IF4, we still have like there are still so many people that want to go to a theater, and with like, say whatever it is, like, crowds of like whatever it is, like say 150 to like whatever 800 to like 800 people or whatever. They still want to go places and not have to be kind of the curator of their own information or their own content, right? Where they want to go and they want to sit and they want to know that they can trust somebody to pick like really cool films for them, and then have kind of this community experience around it too, right? And so that's cool because that's not lost either, because there's like, we want to, there's something about like when we're sitting at home and kind of watching some of the videos kind of on our own laptop or something. That's kind of cool. That's, we love doing that. That's a way to pass the time. But to be in a theater with like, a few hundred other people and like to, take that deep breath when, when a fish sips a fly, right? When say like a big West Slope cutthroat or something, a big brown, like sips a small dry on slow-mo. And you kind of like, you realize that you're part of like this common humanity because you all kind of like gasp at the same time, right? Or or when somebody like trips and falls and you all kind of like laugh at the same time, right? Like we still want that too, right? We want to know that that we're kind of like
the group
brothers and sisters in all of this too, right? So
and I didn't even realize, I mean, there's a few things I'm learning along the way, the film tour, and that's similar to, when you think like F3T, right? I mean, I always think we hear about, and it's, I mean, totally separate. I mean, there's no connection at all to F3T.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. No connection at all. Yeah.
But it's a good name because when you hear it, you're like, oh, okay, this is similar right away. You're like, okay, but it's different. I mean, I guess there could be a, what's the next, but you're talking, so describe that a little bit on the what you guys have going here. Is this more, how is it different from F3T?
Well, I think that we're like probably in the branding of it. I know that that we like one of our slogans is like the soul of fly fishing, right? So we very much want connect to the flying lure on a number of different levels. So yeah, so like I don't know like about this phrase. Oh, I do know about this phrase, but I don't know if it's kind of good to throw it on a podcast or not. But there's fish porn, right? Like there's like this stuff, and I kind of consider that like like a kid going to a candy store, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like that's kind of low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like everybody's going to be attracted to that, and
the grip and grin.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not hard to kind of like meet somebody at that level. But then there's kind of like there's levels that are a little bit deeper than that in all of us that that you connect with, and when you connect with it, you connect with somebody at like a super deep level, right? So with some of our films we like to share kind of story as well, or narrative, and in that narrative a lot of times people will be kind of bearing their souls. They'll be like, fly fishing changed my life, and here's how it saved me, type thing, right? And people identify with that too, because we all essentially love stories of like redemption stories too, right? Like think of the Green Mile or whatever, right? Where we love kind of like these stories that kind of show that things might not work out for us, but in the end they do work out for us too. And we can tell those stories too through fly fishing as well. And so so we kind of with the IF4 we've kind of made it very much a family friendly product that we hope kind of reaches people at like multiple different levels, and that I would say that's kind of our formula in a way. Where we want we want dad or mom to be able to take their 10-year-old son or daughter, because we know when we started fly fishing like as a family, right? So we know when we did that, and we want to be able to take everybody to it, right? And so anyways cool. that's kind of
when do you guys do that? Describe that. When does that happen, that whole series?
Yeah, so essentially we start to filter through films, and kind of like I would say September, October is when we start to see kind of the new crop for the year come in. And then and sometimes we'll work with certain filmmakers, and sometimes we'll do a call out.
Gotcha.
A call out and stuff like that.
So you've seen it. So as we're doing this, we're kind of into November. So can you give a highlight of maybe what's coming up for this next one? I mean, you've seen a lot of it, right?
Well, yeah, no, we're still kind of like they haven't been shipped to me yet.
Oh, okay.
So,
gotcha.
So I'm kind of like last line of defense.
Gotcha.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Where I'm like, I don't have to do
That's
have to do the sift through kind of the hundreds of them anymore. So
Perfect.
So I'm kind of last line of defense. But yeah, no, the filmmakers that we normally work with a lot, they're ones that tell stories like I would say like no other, right? Like they they'll take you to places that you can only dream of going, and essentially that that end up becoming those places that you're like, okay, next year if I can afford that place, that's where I'm going, right? So they kind of become like the films kind of become that, and they feature that, right? So so we're kind of getting to that place where we're ready to be narrowing it down type thing. And then in January, that's when we kind of do the premiere, and we do kind of like, I guess we do a few different premieres in different places, and because one of the Canadian premieres we'll often do in Calgary, because that's kind of like kind of fly fishing hotbed, right? And so we often do a number of different sold out shows there where we'll fill theaters kind of like multiple times over, right? Because there's just so many fly anglers in that area.
Oh, yeah.
So, also down in the States too, we do premiere down there, and usually we do that with the fly fishing show. And so.
Today's episode is sponsored by Country Financial. The fires in the Northwest and throughout the West in the last few years have been devastating for thousands of people. Some folks have lost their homes, their belongings, and their sense of safety has all been challenged. This is why insurance and protecting your assets are so critical. Dalton at Country Financial is here, and he was on the front lines during the fires, handing out checks to Country Financial community members, providing drinks, food, and more. And each time Dalton meets up with a client, he does an extensive review of their current assets and coverage. This is his opportunity to really decide and let you know what you need to make educated decisions for your insurance needs. This is a super critical piece, and Dalton Roy loves it. He loves getting out in the rural community, connecting with people, loves the outdoors, fishing, hunting, everything that goes with it. And so I'm excited to be sharing Country Financial and Dalton with you. The unexpected will happen, so it's always best to make sure your assets and life are protected. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/country right now to get started. That's COUNTRY. Check out Dalton and support this podcast and a great local company right now. Sounds like the more we dig in, you've got a bunch of stuff going. Right on the surface, it looks like Fly Fusion, but I mean, the TV show, is that a separate deal you have going as well?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have Fly Fusion TV, and that's kind of taken a hiatus just through COVID.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so, but we've got plans, like we've got all of our contracts kind of signed up with different television stations and stuff like that. We're ready to get back up on planes. So we'll be filming again. We'll be filming again in 2023. And so, yeah, and that'll be like, you'll be able to watch that kind of on a few different networks. And yeah, so that's kind of coming back up. We had we had 2 full-blown seasons, and then we had like this season where we didn't want to go with like kind of broadcast, where we thought, well, we'll try kind of like just internet distribution. And I think we want to go back to like, we're going to end up doing both now. Just because we, as much as, a lot of people have moved away from broadcast, there's still very much a market for it.
Yeah.
And so,
broadcasting being just like going on, whatever it is, the cable network, I don't even know what they have.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so there's still very much like a market for that. And so we're going to be going back into that field as well, or into that kind of area as well. But want to talk about like I think that's kind of some of the most fun that I've had in the last number of years, is just out filming Fly Fusion television, where it's, where we're going to all these different places, and, the kind of the people that we're filming with, and, some of the hosts that we work with. Like I have a co-host, Jim McLennan. He writes in the magazine as well. But then we work with, kind of lots of different kind of influencers as well. Like we filmed with Paula Shear before, and she's, she has quite a social media following, and she's out of Calgary, Alberta. And then we filmed before with April Vokey as well. And so we film with kind of lots of different people that have a lot to say and a lot to offer, and who are just absolutely amazing anglers. So and then the people that we film with too, like the cinematographers, it's just kind of next level, right? Like, so anyways, it's a lot of fun, and the guides that we work with, they're always like, lots of personality. So it's always lots of fun.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you guys are covering, and so again, on the Fly Fusion magazine and what you guys cover, it's North America. I mean, do you say like what percentage is, say, Canada versus US versus North America versus world? I mean, is it a
wow. Yeah. No, great question. I would say kind of 50. Oh man, percentage wise.
Yeah, just rough.
So,
I know.
Yeah, just rough. I would say probably maybe like a 60-40, I would say, for like North America kind of versus world, right?
Oh, wow.
Maybe 70-30.
So there you go. Yeah. So 70-30, but that's like, so US, Canada, North America is like 60 to 70%. Then you got like 30% world. So that's cool. And then if you break out US and Canada, what's the percentages on content?
Oh, US and Canada, probably, I would say more like, probably 60% Canada.
So same thing. And so of the 70%, like 60
that's right.
Is half. So
yeah,
you're kind of half. I mean, you got a good distribution, right? So a lot of people, I'm just kind of getting that point. A lot of people that are listening in the US right now, you've got tons of content that are US focused destinations and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that like subscriber wise, say with the magazine, I think that we actually have more subscribers in the States than we do in Canada. Now
Yeah, it's
granted, the
bigger.
States is far bigger,
Yeah.
but we've got lots of subscribers in
Yeah.
the States for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it's all the same. I mean, I always say it's a country break, right? But I always see it, even though
Mhm.
Canada's a lot different and we're, for better
Yeah.
and worse, right? But it's almost like the same thing. I don't see, and again, I don't know Calgary, I don't know lots of the other provinces as well, but
Right.
BC to me, from when I've been up there, I mean, we did this trip up to shout out to Skitchine Lodge. I mean, we sat there,
Right.
we had like it
Yeah.
was kind of a hosted trip. We had these 6 guys, all of them were from Canada. And I
Yeah.
sat there, and Phil Roy was there, and Greg. I mean, it
Yeah.
was like a whole crew of all
Yeah.
Canadians, and I was the one American.
Yeah.
But I mean, I felt totally there was no difference, right? I mean, a little bit
Yeah.
of difference. We
Yeah.
talked about like gun control and stuff like that. There's stuff like
Right.
that, but the
Yeah.
people wise, it's the same exact thing. I mean,
Well,
do you find that your readers? I mean, it's kind of the same
Yeah.
demographic, same people.
Oh yeah. It's very, very similar. I mean, like when you were saying that, right? Like, oh yeah, you're up here, kind of, fishing, and it's very similar. Like when I'm out filming, like there's a few American cinematographers that we use out of Utah,
Mm.
and it's like, essentially like we like to poke fun at each other about how different it is,
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
not, right?
Yeah.
But you said, gun control comes up, and
Yeah.
which is something that like as a Canadian, we just like generally we just don't get like how in love with guns you guys are
I
down there,
know.
but
Yep.
but
Yep.
but
We
so
love
we
our
don't fully
guns.
understand that. Yeah. So
It's
we don't
weird.
fully understand that, but
Yeah.
but other than that, it's like there's so many similarities. I mean, I'll always be like kind of making fun or poking fun at the cinematographers for like their accent, even though their accent is like it's like almost like unrecognizable as far
Right.
as like Canadian accent versus like American.
Yeah.
But it's like but whenever Canadians think of an American accent, we always think a lot, like down in the deep south, right? Like
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
down there.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's kind of the accent that we always think of.
That's
but,
right.
So we're
That's
always
right.
kind of poking fun of that. And I'm
Yeah,
always
totally.
saying, so how do you say this down in the States? And they're like, well, the word's exactly the same because it's English, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And you guys have the same thing. You go to the East Coast, and you've got the whole the influence from like the Europe, right? More of an influence on that
Mhm.
side. And you're
Yeah,
in
exactly.
you're in Vancouver Island. Is that kind of where you're at?
That's right. Yeah, I live on Vancouver Island. So yeah, so even a little bit separated from the mainland. Yeah, it's and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful out here. So I get my fill of like whatever type of fishing I want, right? Like basically, I'm a trout guy at heart. So, so I fish a lot for coastal cutthroat.
Yeah.
But then I'll fish for steelhead. I'll fish for, I think you guys call them like silvers, but we call them coho. So, and coho are really like
actually, just for clarity, I think the way that works is there is confusion on silvers coho. I think the way it works is we call them coho, but everywhere once you get up to Alaska, they all call them silvers or kings.
Call them. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so down here, and probably some people call them silvers as well, if they're, you know what I mean. But yeah, for the most part, I think we still call them coho. At least I do, coho and Chinook and all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because and we have a few different names for like the Chinook, right?
Yeah, what do you call
them? Chinook, and then like a Chinook over 30. Yeah, king also, but for a Chinook over 30 pounds, we call it a tai.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys call it that too?
No, but I mean, I know that's kind of like I don't know all the details, but yeah, I've heard of the tai. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's right. Yeah. So and I live like right in Campbell River, like that's and that's kind of like the home of like the Tai Club, and where guys are kind of out in rowboats fishing with,
What do you call chum?
Yeah, we just call them chum.
And same thing for everything else, sockeye and pinks. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But I find that like say with pinks, like there's so many people that fly fish for pinks. And I think it's just because up here in like where I'm from, like it becomes like a circus on the river because there's so many people out there, but it's because there's so many pinks that return. So like I often just kind of skip that fishery, but like coho are like, to me, they're tasty. They are the salmon that are like, and the salmon that are like meant for fly fishing, right? Like they'll take.
Oh, are they stripping? Are you stripping those guys in up there?
Oh, stripping. Yeah, stripping so hard, right? And they'll take, I can remember fishing up in, I was fishing up in Alaska a number of years ago. And I was there with, I got to do this really cool trip, right? There was this one fly rod company that's like, hey, we've got this new fly rod. Do you want to go up to Alaska with us, stay in a lodge and test it out? I'm like, yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, please. I'll do that. Yeah. So we were up there and like, I think it was like the second week of August, and there was like just kind of silvers or coho just everywhere. Right. And so there was a few days where we're just like, stripping flies, for all these coho, which is amazing. Like just amazing. Like there's such a visual fish, right? When they hit that fly. And, but then our guide was like, hey, do you guys want to dry fly fish?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, I'm all what? Yes, please.
Yeah.
And so there was a few days of our guided trip where we're kind of like casting these massive wogs kind of out into the stream and then stripping and just watching like these, this V behind that fly and this massive mouth open up, and then you're onto the fish. And man, that was such an amazing experience. But that translates to Vancouver Island as well, right? Where I'll go into like some of my favorite streams that are a little bit more remote, just to get away from some of the crowds, and where you can, where you're kind of stripping these, coho, they'll take smaller flies, right? So you can be stripping like some, smaller streamer patterns and stuff, and be taking these, these nice kind of 8-10 pound.
What's a smaller streamer pattern?
Well, I would say like a size 6, right? Streamer pattern, like kind of like
a couple inches.
Like an inch or two long. Like they'll take that. But you know what? Like the coho too, like you can nymph for them too, which is really insane. Because I wouldn't have imagined, but one of my buddies, like a number of years ago, said, "Oh yeah, no, he's all, the hare's ear." I'm all, yeah. He's all, I get them all the time on a hare's ear nymph. I'm all, what? Yeah. No way. And so sure enough, so I tried nymphing for them too, and sure enough, they'll take that. But his theory, and I don't know if it's like, proven or not, but his theory was, well, it's because coho out of all the Pacific salmon, they spend the most time in their natal streams, right? So of course they're gonna like have kind of a a better imprint about like on kind of their brains of like, that's right, yeah. So they spend so much time there, so they're gonna take kind of everything once they kind of come back in. Which, I mean, what a great kind of theory, anyways. But that's what fly fishing is, right?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
So many theories, right?
Totally. Yeah, you guys are in that's the cool thing about BC is that, you get the salmon. It's a little like Alaska. Those fish are changing. You get more action, but let's take this into, I want to, we talked at the start about getting into some places to go. And we're talking a little bit about it because species wise, we could go down that road. Let's just think, let's give, since we mentioned that as far as places to go, and like I said, Brian Chan talked about Stillwater, but let's just throw it all out there. If somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I'm heading up to BC, I want to go fishing. What do you tell them if you have to say, hey, here's like 10 places to go? What break that down a little bit?
Yeah. Well, number one, I'll never tell them about like my most secret spots, but no just kidding.
Yeah. Well, how does that work? I was just going to say earlier when you're doing the magazine, because, I'm trying to think. We've got a lot of editors on. That's always a good question. Like, how do you balance that? Because I'm sure people get pissed, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I think it's like what we do say with the magazine is we don't do a lot of destination with the magazine. With the TV show, we do, like we have to, right? So the balance there is that like with the TV show, say, like we will name a region, but not like a specific place in that region.
Yeah. Like Calgary, they'll say.
That's right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So we'll say, we're kind of fishing in this region. And there's
for the species
and with this guide. So if you want to if you want to hook up with that guide, then he'll get you to those places. Right.
Yeah.
But if it's like a really popular fishery already, then it's like, well, it's not like us kind of coming along and naming that is going to create any more traffic. It's already got kind of the traffic that it's going to get. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's kind of our line there. Yeah. But if you're coming up to BC, which legitimately is like, it is, I've been to a number of different places in the world now, and BC is like, it is one of the most beautiful places in the world, but and the variety of fishing. So So, if you want to, fish kind of like dry fly, West Slope, West Slope,
Yeah.
Cutthroat, or like big bull trout, then you're going to be kind of just above Montana in what's kind of the southeast corner of the province. So that's kind of the Kootenays. So there you're fishing kind of Rocky Mountains, but then you're also fishing like the Columbia Range as well, which again, they're kind of like two massive ranges that are like very, very like within kind of a car drive of each other, where you could, fish the Rockies kind of in the morning and kind of drive across and fish the Columbia Range in the afternoon type thing.
What's amazing about that, Derek? What's amazing about that is that it just shows you how big the area is. And I don't know the Columbia.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, I'm literally where I live down in Oregon. I mean, we're at the confluence of the Columbia into the ocean.
Oh, no, that's right.
Yeah, so I'm on the coast.
That's right. So, so I grew up like, and this is going to sound like so crazy, and I love talking to people like you, because it's like, because this is like just a massive connection that has to do with a big stream with a big river, right? But I grew up like an hour from the headwaters of the Columbia River.
Oh, wow.
So the headwaters of the Columbia River, and not a lot of people know this, and this is kind of crazy, but not a lot of people know this, but the headwaters is actually called, it's a lake, just like or like kind of 20 minutes outside of a little town called Invermere. And the lake is called Columbia Lake. And it like, it misses the Kootenay River flows south past Columbia Lake, literally misses it by like maybe a kilometer, right? Coming out of the Rockies. And it literally misses, and it's quite a stream by the time it like passes south past Columbia Lake. And then Columbia Lake, so the Columbia River, the headwaters there, it flows north up the Rocky Mountain Trench for like whatever 100 200 kilometers, right? So it flows north, but then kind of doglegs towards, you would say, the ocean, basically. So doglegs west, and then turns and then comes back down, and then the Kootenay River flows south, but then doglegs and comes back up. And so the Kootenay River actually meets the Columbia River in a place called, like, kind of just outside of a place called Trail, British Columbia.
Oh yeah.
And the two kind of come together there. But back in and here's what I'm getting to. Hopefully this doesn't take too long.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm getting to, which is that like back in the late 1800s, there were steamships. Like, steamships used to paddle up the Columbia River up from the States. And there was a time where they actually built like this canal between the Kootenay River and Columbia Lake.
Oh, wow.
And in a little town that almost doesn't exist anymore called Canal Flats. And so there were steam paddlers that used to go like kind of right up into the lake from the Kootenay River. Anyways, it's quite a fascinating history.
That is.
Now that trench, or that canal that they built, obviously, I think they said they only kind of ran a few steam paddlers through it, and then they never used it after like a few months or something like that.
Gotcha.
Anyways, so the Columbia system, like where I grew up, it's headwaters, right? And where you are, it's like that's kind of that's the terminal point, right? That's where it meets the ocean.
Exactly.
So it is such a massive drainage. Like, oh man, it is such a massive drainage. It's so cool.
It's really interesting because you look at you're talking, I mean, where you're at, I mean, there's a lot of dams, but there's a couple that are full dams and no passage, right? So there's literally fish, all those salmon, historically we're getting up there, they haven't been, it's been a long time.
That's right. If you study the First Nations people in the area, they were called the Tanaha, or they are called the Tanaha. And they were a nomadic tribe, and they would, like, at certain times of the year, they would go right to the headwaters, so right to where the stream came out of Columbia Lake, and they would get salmon there. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that's amazing.
Like that the salmon would like pass all the way through right up to like the headwaters, so they would have been sockeye, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a few there's quite a few kokanee up in that area. So they're all essentially landlocked salmon, right?
Yeah.
So, so anyways, it's
cool.
super fascinating that
Yeah,
fish
this is
used to
good.
be
Well,
able
this
to-
is gonna, Derek. This is gonna take a little while to get this list because number one took us
right.
a
Sorry.
10 minutes.
Yeah. That took us. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
All good because that's what it's all about. I love
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah.
connection right there is amazing
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
probably thousands of miles of river, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
So we got
Yeah.
the rock. So what else we got on this list?
Yeah, and then if you want to like kind of if you're fishing above like say like Washington State, right? Then you get into like you get into a lot of the lakes. So in the like in kind of the Kamloops region, it's very, very famous for lakes, and Brian Chan being on your being on your podcast, he would have gone through all that. But then if you go north, so here's something really cool. If you go north of like the Kamloops region, like the lake region, and then head up into what's called the Caribou region. It's like there are some fjord lakes up in there that are part of like the western portion of the Columbia range, like the Columbia Mountain range, where salmon head up like the Fraser system. So they'll head up the Fraser system and then they'll go up into like these little tiny kind of like, I don't know what you'd call them. I think in the States you call them like podunk towns, maybe. Like kind of like towns that like you don't even know that they exist. They're like there's like so few people there.
Right.
Anyways, there's a little town up there called Likely, British Columbia, and then there's this lodge in Likely called Northern Lights Lodge, and there's this guide called Skeed Brukowski, and he is like the most wonderful person to fish with, and they have like just an absolutely like off the charts amazing fishery, and it's like for big rainbows and bull trout that kind of follow the salmon up these little tiny feeder streams that nobody can get to, and so you got to take like these boats on this big fjord lake, and then you got to take jet boats to get like up in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There's like grizzly bears like just absolutely everywhere, and they're like, and you're getting into like big rainbows, like I don't know, like there was one and you know it's always the fish that gets away, but there was one rainbow that I lost up there. Now there was lots that I caught that were kind of like in the 20-inch range, but there was one that Skeed and I were kind of like, we're like, that had to be like 30 inches. Like it was just this massive rainbow, right? Yeah. And so anyways, so they follow the salmon up there, and that's like, that fishery is like, it's a lot of fun, and that's more of like kind of late summer, kind of fall fishery that you can get into up there.
Okay.
And then if you head north from there, then you get up into like, that's when you start to get really, really remote, right? So we're going to be actually, I can't name where we're going to be filming next. Yeah. I was just about to say it, but I shouldn't name it. But anyways, we're going to be filming up in like very northern BC, and so
it's like north of the Skeena Basin.
Yeah. So we're going to be even up farther than that, and then if you head west, then you're into like coastal fisheries, right? When you're on, say, like the Skeena, that there's lots of systems up there that are but the salmon fishery is still quite prolific out on Vancouver Island, where I'm from. And that's like, I don't know if you kind of picture like, I fished the Olympic Peninsula a few times now. And if you picture kind of Olympic Peninsula, but then kind of head north, essentially that's what Vancouver Island is, right? So we've got, mountains and streams and the Pacific Ocean that surrounds us. So, so that's kind of like, I would say that's kind of a quick rundown of and then here's like a little maybe hidden gem, but if you had because we often think that it's just like kind of just like the Kamloops region that has like really, really good stillwater fishing, but if you head north of like where I grew up, which is southeast British Columbia, which is the Kootenays in that Rocky Mountain Trench area, if you head north, there's towns north of there that have like just like monster rainbows, like just like huge rainbows in them. And so, anyways, that's like maybe a little gem there for you.
that's what it's known for. I mean, part of it is it's BC's known for a lot, but the Kamloops, just the lakes, right? The big rainbows. So there's still, I mean, there's still plenty of places you can go and find some big rainbows that you guys have seen out there. It's not like the pressure isn't. It's not crazy pressure where the fish you've been losing. Well, I guess that's the thing, is that you guys have done a good job of protecting those areas, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's still like BC's, it's such a huge province, right? Like it's such a huge area that, yeah, I mean, like in some of the, definitely like, there's a few places now where it's like kind of more bumper boats, right? When you're floating down a river.
Yep.
But if you want to get away from that, there's kind of all the territory in the world, and all the rivers in the world, right? That you can drive to.
So could you just go out there? Say you're taking a road trip, take a month off, head up to BC, and just, what would you recommend there? If, you mentioned a few, you got all the stuff. We started at Columbia. We went around the Kamloops, the Caribou region.
Yeah.
What would be the trip there? How would you plan that trip? What would be the way to?
Yeah. If you're going to like trout bum it for like, say, a month, right?
And maybe even hit a lodge along the way or two,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, you definitely, like, one of the places you'd likely want to start would be kind of heading up into that Kootenay region. You want to stop at you'd want to stop at kind of Elk River area in Fernie, British Columbia, and then from there it's like literally you're like, if you kind of like home base Fernie, you can hit like some of the most prolific like dry fly trout fishing in like probably in North America, I would say. Really? It's pretty amazing, that area. And again, it's like, it's become pretty well known. So there's like, the fly shops in Fernie, I would say they're pretty busy now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they do some pretty amazing guiding out of there. But yeah, you could hit that. And then I think that if you wanted to do like a super cool trip, like probably one of the most cool trips, and the farther north you get, obviously kind of the fewer people you see.
Mm-hmm.
But if you started in like, say, like Fernie, and you could fish there for like, whatever, a week or two, or for the rest of your life if you wanted, right? But then if you want to take that, your converted kind of camperized van and kind of head north from there, then you're heading up the Rocky Mountain Trench, and the farther north you go, the fishing is like, it's going to be equally as good. So it's going to stay really good. But then you're just going to see fewer and fewer people. Right. And so if you keep heading north, you're going to kind of follow that, the tributaries of like the Columbia system. Right. And so you'll get up into those, and you'll find, big bull trout up in there, and then also like cutthroat and stuff up in there. So that would be a pretty cool trip to do. Yeah.
That'd be cool. So then you could swing around there. If you kept it going, you could swing around over to the Kamloops. Kamloops is just kind of west, and then you can hit all those lakes and get into some big rainbows, right? That's kind of
That's right. Yeah. If you want to do that. And then if you wanted to like, coastal fishing, it's, and this, right? Cause you're like, cause you're on the coast, but coastal fishing is really temperamental, right? So you can't set your watch to it really. No. Like, you could be a week early and not see anything, and end up there a week later and like have the time of your life. Right. So it's a little bit more temperamental, and you have to kind of like, I say you have to kind of know somebody, like on a coastal stream, if you want to like make the best of that. Like just showing up, I guess you could really luck out, but then you could like feel like there's absolutely no fish in the stream.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how it feels sometimes.
Yeah, this is cool. So then you're going, and then as we go up a little bit north, you mentioned the name, which is the greatest name ever, Skeed Brokowski. He's that's got to get up to the Caribou region, and so up there, man. Now take us back to there. So Caribou region, what's that look like? That is, what can we get excited about for that?
So you want to talk like kind of all the fishing opportunities in the world. Like it's like, so like the Caribou region, it's also called.
Where is this from? The one, the 150 mile house area, like.
So this is where you're kind of at. Like if you're heading up to like 150 mile.
Yeah, it's in that area.
House, it's in that area, and then if you head east out of like I think it's
Yeah,
like a
towards the
100 mile or
mountains.
150 mile towards the mountains. That's where you're
Gotcha.
going to end up in a little tiny place called
Yeah.
likely British
Gotcha.
Columbia.
Likely. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And so you end up kind of there. But if you head west too out of there, then you end up on the what's called the I think it's the what is it, the Chilcotin plateau, I believe.
Okay.
Anyways, there's lots of lakes, lots of lakes and lots of really good kind of river fishing out there too. So so that's kind of that region, which is like lots of different opportunities as far as like lake fishing and river fishing.
Mm-hmm.
That's like it's really very, very prolific as far as like the type of, and just like, again, so when you're fishing up in that region, specifically kind of late summer, early fall,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a meat eater situation. Although you can get them on dries, you can get kind of the bigger rainbows on dries too up there at that point. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, and then you mentioned heading up north, kind of the really up, like what would be, I mean, because north goes, you can go way up. How far are you going up? Like Juneau up in Alaska is pretty far north.
That's pretty far north.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you head north from there, so then you're going to get to a place called Prince George, British Columbia. Prince George, there's some guides that are good guides out of Prince George as well. And you're going to get, out of there, you're going to get like bull trout fishing and rainbows. And so you can go there. But then if you even head north out of there, then you're going to get into something called like the Spatsizi Wilderness. And there's like, I think up in there, you're definitely going to want, like, you definitely want to find guides, although there's water up there, there's water up there all day that you'd be fishing, and probably you wouldn't see a soul for like days and days and days. Cause that's considered very, very much northern, very isolated British Columbia.
Gotcha. And is that more rivers and trout?
Yeah. Rivers, trout. But there's also tons of lakes up there too. So
Gotcha.
So it's kind of got all of that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned, then you could swing across to the West Coast down below into, whatever, right? Hit the Skeena, and then any other coastal rivers that are coming in.
Yeah.
And just, you can't really, there's not really a highway going along the coast, right? That's the thing about it. I mean, you got 97 going right up through BC, but there's not a lot of major roads. There's kind of only one going up north.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's like a lot of the streams that you're going to fish, like coastal. Yeah. It's kind of a, planes, trains, and automobiles
like
to
Alaska.
get to them, right?
Yep.
Like exactly. You have to know kind of who you're going to go with, and there are kind of some roads that that you can take, like if you're if you know where you're going on the Skeena, there's like the Stikine, there's like the Grand Canyon of Stikine that you could up near a little place called Telegraph Creek, and there's like there's kind of like roads that head towards the coast type thing. But it's like, it's super remote, like really, really remote. And so it's like, if you know somebody that, is a guide that guides like kind of coastal areas, then they can kind of, it's more of like either a helicopter trip. Like there's helicopter trips out of like from Vancouver Island to like coastal streams, and there's like you can also take jet boats up some of the coastal streams. But like other than that, there's like no roads. There's not roads that are accessible. Anyways, like there's some logging companies that have built some roads up there, but they're not like they're not roads that you can actually drive to, right? Or leave from. It's like,
wow, there's just roads that they build out in the middle of nowhere to hit. Like,
that's exactly
do some
it.
log or whatever. And then this is, I mean, essentially it is like once you go across the border from Washington, I mean, it's pretty much like Alaska. I mean, it's the same deal. There's just not, there is one main road going up, and actually it's the same road if you're heading up to Alaska.
That's right. Yeah.
You'd stay on that same road. You go from Prince George and then cut over all the way up into Alaska, right?
That's right. Yeah, I take the Stewart Cassier Highway. Up to Alaska. I've done that trip before. I've driven up there.
Yeah, it's a cool trip.
And I know back in like the 90s, that was the last time I drove like all the way up to Alaska, like driving rather than flying up. But but there, like back then, it wasn't a paved road
Yeah.
all the way through. It was like when you got to,
That's
I think it was like
right.
Cranberry Junction or something, then it was like that was it. Like the pavement ran
That's
out for like
cool.
hundreds of kilometers, right?
That was the thing. I just did it a couple years ago, and that was amazing. I was surprised. I was expecting like really crazy remote, but yeah, the highway all the way up to Anchorage is like it's no big deal. It's amazing. I mean, I
Yeah.
saw bears all
Yeah.
along the way. It was cool.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right, well, that gives us a snapshot. Basically, if somebody was coming in to BC and wanted to hit something, that's lots of opportunities. Where would you do you have on your website? I'm sure you guys have covered this in the magazine. If somebody wanted to dig into some of these specific places, where would you send them or tell them, or are there other resources?
Well, I think that, yeah, we don't. So on the website, like we don't do a lot of destination stuff, right? So, yeah, we kind of stay away from destination stuff a little bit.
Yep.
So yeah, so I think like just, there's fishing, I think it's called, Fishing BC that you can go to, and it's got like kind of a list of guides and yeah, that are in different regions, and so you can check out those places, kind of online, and that'll kind of get you going.
Well, we mentioned the only one we need. We got Skeed, so pretty much it.
Skeed Brickhouse.
We're gonna fill up Skeed's lineup for the next year. That's awesome. Nice.
Yeah, that guy's an absolute gem. Like if you get a chance to sit down with that guy and fish with that guy, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look him up and see if he'll come on the podcast here.
Yeah.
Today's episode is sponsored by Togens Fly Shop. Togens Fly Shop provides superior quality products at a great price. They have also a great YouTube channel that you can check out right now with new fly tying tutorials each week. Togens also has you covered if you're looking for unique in-house products, and they also support many of the great brands out there that you know and trust. It's been fun connecting with Justin and the family over the years now, and it's been really cool. A great local fly shop. Togens is also offering their fly tying box, where they send out materials at a regular cadence where you don't even have to think of it. You just open the mailbox and there's your Togens pack. And I recently made an order through Togens, and the experience is always perfect. They've got you covered if you ever have questions or need any help, whether that's a YouTube tutorial or connecting with them personally. Since 2005, Togens has been over-delivering on customer service, and it's time for you to check out Togens Buzz for yourself. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/Togens right now to check out their diverse selection of products today. You support this podcast by clicking through that link to Togens online. That's Togens, Togens. Okay, back to the show. Take us to the, so I want to just touch on bull trout a little bit. It's you mentioned a little bit the meat eaters and stuff, but give us a little rundown on just quickly, you're heading up. Let's say we're going to one of these places. You mentioned a bunch of them, whether it's out of Fernie, but you're chasing some big bull trout. What are the, talk about the gear real quick, gear, like what weight rod are you using for some of these bigger fish?
Yeah, some guys two-hand use two-hand like spay rods for them, but I don't. I normally just use like an 8-weight. But I'll use like a lot of times I'll use like a 10-foot 8-weight rather than a 9-foot.
Okay.
And just because I just find it throws the sink tips and the heavy flies a little bit better. So anyways, usually like 8-weight rod, quite a bit of backing, specifically like because some of these bull trout, like a lot of them are kind of like 5 to 10 pounds, but you can hook into a bull trout that's like, that's 15 plus, right? Like that. And when you hook into that, like the way that they fight is they're not like coho where they're kind of cartwheeling and jumping and kind of doing that. They're kind of like, they're duking you out. So they're staying low and they're not wanting to move very much. Right. Wow. And so you have to apply quite a bit of pressure to them. So you're on like, sink tips, say like a 10-foot extra fast sink tip, usually with say like, 2 or 3 feet of leader. And and then like, I don't know. I know that there's guys that will use flies that are like
giant,
that are like, a solid, like, and I'm not exaggerating here, but like say like a solid foot long, right?
Foot long,
like they're using big stuff. I
like thinking the bigger the fly, the bigger the fish.
That's right. Yeah. I'm okay with like, say like a 6-inch, like a 4 to 6 inch streamers.
Yeah.
With like usually weighted with even with a cone head, right? So weighted.
What would be a name? What would be one name of a fly you think somebody could look at? Are they?
Yeah. So like a really popular, like any type of bunny leech.
Oh, okay.
Slash kind of like Dalai Lama slash kind of like those things, anything that's going to represent like say like a like a 5-inch white fish or like a cutthroat, or like in the fall like they'll attack kind of flies that are a little more red and white, because that's when the kokanee are kind of in some of the smaller streams, right? So they'll attack those then. So it's kind of like anything that's that's kind of big and you're swinging it. I don't know. It's a little bit like, I guess it's a little bit like steelhead fishing in a way, where you're kind of like swinging sink tips a lot of times and slowing it down and getting down.
Yeah. And you're fine. Are you fishing big? Are you fishing like small creeks, big, medium, big rivers? What are you fishing for?
Oh yeah. It just depends on the time of year, but like, say in the fall, a lot of times they're in more the main stems. Like they're kind of like in, not so much in the tributary streams, but they're kind of back out in some of the bigger water. And so you got to be making bigger casts and kind of knowing where to go and kind of what log jams to fish, or what kind of tributary mouths to fish, or you got to be kind of hoofing it, or finding the right places, or in a jet boat type thing for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then but you can like a lot of guys too will fish them kind of when they're kind of heading up some of the streams where like they really love in order to spawn. So they love kind of the very cold, clear water tributary streams. And so a lot of guys, kind of in their, I would say in their staging, or like in their pre-spawn, right? So where it's still okay to fish for them. A lot of guys are, fishing. Some guys will fish kind of bigger streamers even in those scenarios, but some guys will go with kind of like, well, maybe nymph for them through that time, like when they're in kind of some of the smaller streams. And by nymph, I don't know. By nymph, I mean, I won't go into like specific flies, but yeah. So some guys will kind of throw more of a nymph setup at them at that point too.
Gotcha. Like indicator fishing sort of stuff.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I know, again, this is one of those trout, we were thinking, and we're going to have to probably do, well, I think what we're going to do here is get skeet on, and then we're going to go deep into bull trout, because we're, today we're just not going to be able to do it justice, but it sounds like it's a streamer game. I mean, that's, a lot of people love streamers. They could probably get some local intel, find a place where they think the fish are going to be, put together your steelhead type gear, sinking lines, and some big streamers, and just go for it. And basically what you're stripping it, when you swing it across, is that kind of downstream and across sort of thing?
Yeah, it's downstream and across. Yeah. Not
like Kelly Gallup style, where some of the, it's more upstream. You're doing all sorts of different things, right? This is more like just standard.
Well, it depends on how deep the, say the canyon is, or the, where you're fishing. But yeah, sometimes you may have to toss a little bit upstream to get it a little more kind of down in the water column. But generally it's kind of, casting it out and letting it kind of swing through the feeding zone there. And they'll crush it. They'll move to crush it too. Like, but you're not stripping. Like most of the times you're not stripping anyways. It's just kind of it's just a slow swing.
Yeah. Slow swing. Gosh, it's cool because it's the one species that, and I'm not sure of the distribution currently, but it just seems like, you go up in Alaska and, the Dolly Varden and stuff like that. It's like coastal versus inland. But I mean, you don't hear a lot about bull trout. It seems like BC really has you are the place for these big bull trout. Is that kind of the way it is?
Well, there are like, I know down in Montana, they have, bull trout down there. I don't think it's as prolific a fishery though. And,
no, you hear a lot more about browns and rainbows in Montana,
That's right. Yeah. But I know down in Montana and Idaho, there's bull trout as well. And then I think actually I've seen, there was one fella who who did something down in Oregon on bull trout, but I don't know where it was. It was a very specific spot, I believe. Anyways, one of the guys in our had a film.
Oh, right.
In IF4, I think. But
right.
anyways, but it's a very, I think that, like, I know a few people in fisheries management, and they've worked really hard to make sure that it's very much a sustainable fishery, right? Like that it's, like they've really worked hard to figure out the patterns of the bull trout and to protect them.
Yeah.
And so they've done lots of studies, and they've tagged them and really kind of like really figured out kind of why it is that we have a very much prolific bull trout fishery up here, and the way that they manage it is,
same thing, just like the Brian Shannon, the Kamloops.
That's right.
They do a good job at managing things. And then can you actually kill bull trout?
Most places you can't. Most places it's catch and release. But I believe that there's a few places in BC that in order to kind of balance out the system where they have so many bull trout, that there's a few places in the Columbia range, like mountain range, where the bull trout have become very, very prolific. And so they're kind of trying to balance out that fishery by saying that, you can keep one over a certain size and under a certain size. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Trying to manage that makes sense.
Yeah.
What, we talked about kind of the regions when around BC. If you look at yourself, again, you've probably been asked this before, but you got, one fish, one species, or one area. Or maybe let's just go species. What is it? Is it bull trout or is it steelhead? What is the one if you could only kind of hit one in BC?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. It's almost like a don't make me do this. Just one. It's like, I would say my very favorite would have to be like the West Slope Cutthroat.
Oh really? Yeah.
Just because of like how much I love dry fly fishing.
Right.
It's like, they're like,
and these are the West Slope.
Yeah, the West Slope Cutthroat. Yeah.
And they're big. What's a big West Slope cutty?
Well,
I mean, I know they're not big like the other fish, but what would be a big one?
Well, like a big West Slope would be like 20 to 22 inches. Wow. But most of them, you're kind of like, most of them you're getting are like kind of 12, 13.
Yeah.
And then if you get up into 15, that's a nice fish. And 17 is a beautiful fish. Yeah. But you can get like, there's some that you can get that. And then there's kind of cut bows as well too, where some of them have kind of hybrid, like the West Slope with the rainbow. Sure. And then some of those get a little bit bigger too, right? Yeah. Where you can catch those kind of up into the 20s.
Right. Right.
But like it's just kind of, it's the dry fly. It's where you find yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it's like kind of you find yourself kind of out in these little like, headwater streams out in the middle of nowhere, just with nobody around, and cool. where it can be a little bit technical, right? Where, if you put that fly kind of like an inch from the log that's like, across the stream, that there's going to be something that's going to come up and hammer it. And like, it can be just so picturesque. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that that's my favorite, but like, to get in kind of like the, kind of like a sore arm at the end of the day fix, that would definitely be the bull trout, right? Like,
because you're going to get a lot. And are you going to get a lot more action than you would say steelhead fishing?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Gotcha. Oh yeah. If you find the right place and where they're at, then you can have days that are like just multiple.
Really,
I don't want to say numbers, but like multiple. Yeah, lots.
Yeah.
Where you can catch lots of them. But then there's days where you might not be able to find them, right?
Yeah.
And might be more of a struggle. So
right.
But generally speaking, it's not like steelheading where it's like you can go kind of like days or weeks and swing. Yeah. Well, and swing a lot of flies. So
it's interesting the way it works, because you hear, in April, I remember when we had her on back in the day, we talked about that transition of like, fishing with gear into fly and why people do it. And I think part of it is the challenge, right? It's a big part, because coho is a good example. I mean, we were up in Alaska and we started catching coho. I mean, it was so easy that it was, I mean, I won't say boring, but you know what I mean? It's like, and so there is something to that, I mean, if it's that easy, then it loses the fun. So that's why steelheading and muskie and all these other places, it's like the new challenge, right?
Right. Yeah. There is that, isn't there? There very much where if you just catch a lot of fish and like where it can become kind of like, oh yeah, I got another one type thing. And that's kind of like, I think in my older age, I've kind of balanced that out, knowing that, you know, no, like I don't get bored on those days because I'm like, well, not every day is going to be like this, right?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes like through a certain portion of my life, I'd be like, oh man, like, had a day where you caught like just a ton of fish, and you'd just be like, oh, like, I've had my fix for a bit, but
Right.
but now I'm like, no, like those days are like, you got to cherish those days, right? Where it's like where you catch a ton.
There's a chance
because there's going to be days where where it's not going to be that
No.
way, right? And so it kind of like, it's like life kind of balances itself out. So
yeah, totally. Nice. Well, we're going to take it out of here. We've kind of covered a few different things today. You mentioned it was interesting to start. You mentioned your grandpa and your dad and your brother, right? It sounds like this really cool family. And for me, I had a little bit of the same thing. My grandpa wasn't a big fly angler or whatever, but he got my dad into it and stuff. And then, but the brother is interesting because it sounds like you and your brother. I mean, you called him a marketing genius. I mean, what have you learned from your brother doing this? And is he still involved fully and everything?
Oh yeah. No, it's I would say it's his baby. And this is my younger brother, Chris. I have an older brother as well, Jay, and we all fish together still. Same with my dad too, right? My dad, he's getting a little bit older, but we all still get out fishing. That's like,
and I have a brother named Chris as well. So the similarities keep going.
Yeah. So no, my younger brother, Chris, this is kind of, I would say it's his baby, right? Like it's like he and his wife, and they've really kind of done an amazing job, like in fly fishing, in the fly fishing media space. And so what have I learned from him? I think that that he is like, so me, I'm very much a creative type, right? And but I have trouble pulling the trigger sometimes. With him, it's like I really appreciate him because when there's a good idea, he'll chase it, like, and with no thought, right? Like he'll just be like I'm after that idea. And it was like, so even like how the TV show came about, it was like, I had this surgery a number of years back, and I was kind of laid up for about a week, and I was sitting at home and I was watching, like, I thought, oh, I'll watch like the World Fishing Network, right? So I was watching it, and literally I called my brother after a few hours of watching the World Fishing Network, and I said, Chris, I said, we can enter this space, and we can do it the way that we do it, which is like, we've got connections where we've got like connections to absolutely like phenomenal cinematographers. We can do this differently, where it's not like, where we're not kind of giving everybody a rub, where, we're, fishing with so-and-so here, and like we're, with, Billy Bob's Worms, right? And if you get a chance to, like, where it's not that, right? Where it's like, where we can offer people an experience. And I said that to him. I don't know if I was hopped up on like painkillers or whatever when I said that, but I said that to him, and like, and literally within I would say a day, but it was probably like within the week, he had sponsors lined up. He had a camera crew lined up. Like, it was like, no, you're right. Like, kind of like, why haven't we done this? Right. And so, but that's his whole life. It's like when he sees a good idea, he goes after it, and he's kind of got the fortitude to follow through with that too. Right.
Yeah.
And then to be okay with the success or the failure that comes as a result of chasing an idea, because really, like it's actually like, if you have a bunch of good ideas and you don't end up chasing them,
right,
that's far more dangerous than having a bunch of good ideas and chasing them and some of those not working out. Do you know what I mean? So I think that he's kind of figured that out, and that's one thing that I've learned a little bit from him, because I don't naturally do that, right? I'm more of an observer, more of a kind of sit back and, more of a philosophical type, I guess you would say.
Right.
And, but so that's one thing I've learned from him.
You guys balance each other out pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. Is it you and him? I mean, who's leading who else is there with you guys? Do you have like a,
oh, wow. Yeah, no. So we've got, we've got, a number of different editors, right? So we've got, and we've got, so myself, I write a column at the front of the magazine, and then I do some content selection. We've got Jim McLennan, who's my co-host, who also writes a column in the magazine. We've got we've got a number of different kind of editors from all over the place. We've got so we're a lot of times we'll kind of meet at different points. There is like a Fly Fusion Central, and it's in the Kootenays. It's this really cool little building, with like kind of probably the biggest fly in the world out in front of it.
Really?
So we've got like this, we've got this elk hair caddis that's, I don't even know how big it is. It's probably about 10 feet large. That's like out in front of Fly Fusion headquarters there. It's a really cool little place. But so we've got Fly Fusion headquarters. We've got people that work out of the office there, and then we've got people that kind of work all over North America, right? That are editors at large and kind of like different places. So
gotcha.
And then two, we've got film and video editors that go along with the IF4 and stuff like that. So we're kind of like we've got a central location, but we're also all over the place. And so
just like that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, before we get out of here, let's mention your book, because you got this book and we haven't talked at all about it. Let's hear this, because I know it's a little bit different take on what we've been talking about, but there's probably some things that are similar to what we talked about today.
Yeah, that's cool, and thank you for bringing that up. And two, it's like I think that just before I get into the book, I do want to say that this has been really cool, because it's like, because you meet different people in fly fishing, and then just being able to like chat with you, like honestly, you're somebody that I could literally probably go fishing with for like a week or two, like just based on our conversation, right? And like as we're sitting here talking, I'm like, oh man, I could like talk to you all day about fishing, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a great, as a podcaster, I mean, that's a great compliment. So definitely appreciate that.
But so thanks for bringing up the book too. I have a new book. It's called Last Summer on the Sage. And it's very, very different in the sense that it's a fictional novel. So it's if you want to put it into like a kind of a category, probably the category it would go into would be like with say like a river runs through it, or like the River Wye or something like that. So it would kind of go into that camp. And so if you're somebody that likes, I would say, good storytelling, like a good fictional book, like say like through the winter months, right? Where you still want to get your fix, where you like maybe want to like sit on the couch under a blanket by the fire and
that's it,
and sit there and read a good story. That's what this is. It's a fictional story about a 17-year-old kid who grows up in, like, it could be like small town anywhere, but it's small town BC. He has to leave to go to university. And he's kind of trying to make the most out of his last summer fly fishing the rivers that kind of nurtured him, and it's all about kind of the people that he meets along the way. And it was a dream of mine to be able to write the novel, and it was kind of like, it was in my head for, I would say, like 10 years. And I always thought, they're probably like somebody better that could write it. But then in the end, I'm like, you know what? It's obviously there because it's something I have to do. And so I did it. So I sat down. I was going to say I sat down one day. It actually took months and months and months, but I sat down and wrote this story, and it's.
Oh, you did? Wow. So you had the idea in your mind for many years, but then you wrote it pretty quick.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Pretty quick, meaning like, I would say like it probably took me 5 months, I would say, to kind of write like the rough draft of it. Right. And then after that, it goes through months and months and months of like kind of editing and having to change certain things. And but it's a story that if you love fly fishing and you love kind of stories, then I would say you would love this book. And it's like, cause it's got say with Ryan, that Ryan's the main character. It's like, the story, even the story follows like a hatch chart essentially, right? Where it's like, he knows that when he's fishing stoneflies, for example, that his summer's just starting, and that when it gets to like, say like hopper season, that he's really excited because hopper season's like some of his favorite fishing is to fish hoppers, but he also knows his summer's coming to an end, right?
Right.
And then, kind of there's parallel plots in it. He's grown up in kind of small town BC, but he doesn't know his dad. And so he's trying to find his dad. And then it ends up like, he's got best friends that he fishes with too. And so they're, the relationships that form there are very like, very special relationships. And then he forms this one relationship with this old guy that he accidentally meets, that's like, who lives kind of in this cabin out in the middle of absolutely nowhere that nobody's talked to in like 18 years or 20 years, right? Where they kind of form this friendship, and they become like kind of mentor, like this guy becomes like this mentor to him. Anyways, it's right. I loved writing it. Nice. It was so fun. And I hope that if your listeners kind of go out and pick up a copy, that they'll that they would love it too. And anyways.
Sounds great. What was the name again? The title?
Yeah, the title of it's called Last Summer on the Sage. Yeah. And if you do want to pick it up, you can, there's a few different places you can get it. Like obviously you can go to flyfusionmag.com, and there's a little store button, little store icon up at the top of that, where you can click on that and find kind of the books through Fusion Books. There's a few of them there. But one of them is Last Summer on the Sage. And then if you want to kind of support Jeff Bezos and his next trip to space, you can. That's right. you can also Google Last Summer on the Sage and my name, Derek Bird, and it'll come up on Amazon as well. Oh, good. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Awesome. Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes to that. And
awesome.
And are you? Like you said, we could talk easily another 2 hours here, because it's been good. But I'll definitely respect your time here and let you get out of here. And maybe we'll have to do this again. We'll check back, or maybe you guys are going to get your own podcast going. It seems like you keep busting stuff out. Is that on the horizon?
Right.
Is that something in the works, you guys?
No, we're gonna get the TV show back up on plane, and then who knows, maybe from there, it depends on kind of editors' interests and stuff like that too, right? So nice. But we'll see.
Perfect. All right. Well, flyfusionmag.com. We'll send everybody out. And thanks, Derek, for all the time today. And definitely, it's been good getting a little more perspective on kind of you and your family and history and fish in BC. So we'll definitely send some people your way, and look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. It was great chatting with you.
So there it is. Another one in the books. wetflyswing.com/387. That's where it's going to get you. We'll probably throw in the account manager link so you can quickly click over to that if you're interested. We noted that earlier on as we got started today. We are going to be hiring for a new person to come join Team Swing, and this person will have the opportunity to not only manage our community events, engage the community, but we'll also likely get a chance to do some traveling. And so this is going to be a good one. Check it out, wetflyswing.com/manager right now to join. We're going to be closing this up here. I believe I don't have the date in front of me, but I think we have a couple weeks left of this being open. So check it out right now. Or if you know somebody that would love, that has these skills, account management, event planning, those are the skills. Wanted to also remind you we have a big giveaway going on right now. This is with Zag.Fish. They're giving away a $100 gift certificate, plus we're giving away a free local guide trip to your neck of the woods for whoever the winner is on this trip. And we got a little bonus we're giving away as well connected to this podcast. Check it out right now, wetflyswing.com/giveaway. We'll get you a chance to enter this giveaway, and we're always going to be doing an event at the end of this, so we'll probably be giving away some bonus things along the way. So check it out right now. The last one went really well. The Alaska event we did was a lot of fun. So if you want to join, get involved in this cool podcast event. We're trying to expand things a little bit as we move forward. The podcasting is always and always will be the main focus here, but it's been fun jumping into some new things here as we've been moving forward. And now as we're into December, we're, as my kids would say, they've got their rings. They're checking off the days to Christmas, which I remember doing when I was a kid, the countdown. I think I love the calendar, and we're, I guess, 25 days from Christmas. And I'd love to hear what's on your Christmas wish list. If you can, send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com. Or on social media, wetflyswing, and let me know. I'd love to hear one thing that you would be loving to get on your fly fishing wish list for Christmas under that Christmas tree this year. It gives me an opportunity also to connect with you during the holidays and just enjoy and celebrate everything we have going. So I appreciate your support this year. Appreciate you checking in and hanging in all the way to the very end on this one. And I'm looking forward to getting in that next episode. and diving in and having a lot of fun. All right, I hope to catch you on a upcoming trip we have going, maybe on the water somewhere. And if I don't connect with you there, connect with me online anytime. Okay, we're out of here. Hope you have a good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. And I appreciate your support. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.